Dig with everybody, Kajima Tashiv, and welcome back to episode number 41 of the Inline G Flute Podcast with me, your host, motherfucking Inline G. Now you'll notice a wee difference there to the introduction. That's because I've decided to throw in a bit of Irish. Dig with is how you say hello in Irish, and Kajima Tashiv is how you say how are you when you're talking to multiple people in the Ulster dialect. Kajima Tattoo is how you ask how are you in one person, to one singular person, and Kajima Tashiv is multiple people with the Ulster dialect. Because I'm feeling very Irish, because as you can see behind me for the video watchers, I'm not in the Inline G studio in Deutschland. I'm back in beautiful Era in Ireland. I'm in County Down in the north of Ireland, on a wee holiday actually. And although I did plan some very good guests for the podcast this week, as fucking usual, I left it to the last minute, and they're not going to be on in time for an episode this Friday. But I'm never going to let you down. There's always going to be an episode. I wouldn't do that to you. And thankfully, I've got this wee episode. I've always got a wee script in my back pocket. One that I can bring out at parties to impress people. You can imagine how much fucking fun I am. So this is already sitting there. It's an episode I wanted to do for a while. You'd think I was going to do an episode on Irish music, but that's not what we're getting today, because I didn't have that one in the pocket. So today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into one of the biggest pieces in the flute repertoire. It is Jacques Ibert's Concerto for Flute. So we're going to look at Mr. Ibert himself, his style, and we're going to analyse the bollocks out of this piece so you get to know it very well. You get to know it by the point you can bring it out for a drink. You might get to know its fears about the future. You might get to know what his favourite colour is, if it likes long walks on the beach or not. And you never know, maybe they'll kiss you at the end of the night. The reason I'm doing this, why are we doing this episode? One, because I haven't planned very well. But two, and more importantly, I feel that a lot of flutists dread this fucking piece. They hate it. Because, okay, fair enough. Technically, it is a fucking nightmare. It's a very hard piece of music. But it generates a lot of dread and anxiety in flute players. And it really shouldn't. Because this concerto is not like a Tchaikovsky violin concerto or a Mendelssohn violin concerto. It's not that serious. It's much more fun and light and a bit piss-takey. And we need to get our heads out of our flute arses and get our heads into Mr. Ibert's wacky world for the insane. So leave your preconceptions and your notions at the door, wipe your feet, come on in, take a glass of something sparkling off the table and join the Ibert party. So, excuse me, I'm also dying. I've got some kind of old Irish disease that the developed world hasn't seen since the Enlightenment age. Anyway, Mr. Ibert, let's talk about his background. So Jacques Ibert, French lad, if you didn't guess already. Born on the 15th of August, 1890, clocked out, brown bread, dead on the 5th of February, 1962, both in Paris. He was born to a Peruvian mother, who was actually a distant cousin of Manuel de la Falla, the famous composer as well, which is appropriate. His mom wanted to be a concert pianist, a performing musician, but it was deemed inappropriate for a woman of her social background. Fuck off. So she decided to put all the pressure on wee Jacques to become a music star. Classic story. So he started with the violin at 4, and I read this. This is a quote. Apparently, he was too frail for the violin. The wee fucking fanny. So, after giving up a violin, he moved to piano. But he hated playing scales. He hated playing studies. All that kind of stuff. And he had to play a lot of salon music. For flute players, I suppose we think of people like Anderson. The Anderson etudes are salon music. Light, cheesy, fun. He would play them a lot, but he would always put in quote-unquote wrong chords, weird rhythms, fuck about with the melody a bit, etc., etc. So eventually, Mother Ibert gave up. Now, the family at the time, they had an import and export business that was doing very well. And Daddy Ibert always thought, when Jacques is done with his school, he'll come in, take over the business, happy days, Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. But just as Jacques finishes high school, the business goes bust. Fuck. So, Jacques was meant to go study composition at the Conservatoire de Paris, or the Paris Conservatoire, but had to delay those studies for 2 years to go work in a warehouse to generate an income for the family. Also, on an unrelated note, well, not unrelated, but a tangent, if you will, I was a very fucking prominent American academic who said in earnest the other day in a YouTube video, the Conservatoire de Paris. The fucking Conservatoire de Paris. Mate, make up your mind. Either say Conservatoire de Paris or translate the fucking thing into English and say Paris Conservatoire. Don't give me Conservatoire de Paris. I nearly threw my fucking laptop in that river. Disgusting. I'm going to be a blast when I go to America next month. Or the month after. Anyway, so in 1910, Ibert finally does get into the Conservatoire de Paris. Go see the episode of the French Flute School if you're not sure exactly on the French school system, by the way. And he goes there to study composition. By the way, he studied it with Milhaud, Darius Milhaud and Arthur Honegger, who were both part of the composer group Les Six. There's a group of 6 composers in France at the time. Ibert wasn't. Unfortunately, Poulenc was, but Ibert wasn't. And that is an episode I'm going to do as well, because that is a fascinating group of composers. But anyway, he studied there, and then World War I breaks out. So he has to fuck off. He was sent to Amiens, which I think is like the north of France. North of Paris, anyway. Beautiful cathedral in Amiens. And he was drafted into the army, and you had to be, and he was a surgical assistant. And one person he actually cared for when in the army was old Albert Roussel, the famous French composer. But anyway, Ibert got a bit sick, had a few problems, and he was let go. But he decided to come back to the army at his own choice. He really pushed to get back in, and he was even at Dunkirk on D-Day. He was involved in that. And eventually he got given the Croix de Guerre, the War Cross, I think that translated as. It's a medal, and it's the highest military honour you can get in France, still is. So for a wee frail lad who couldn't pick up the violin, he did alright. So after war, he was deciding to stay in the military, go to be a naval captain, or to be a composer. And he chooses to go and be a composer. And he entered the Prix de Rome, which is the big composition prize at the competition at the Paris Conservatoire, or the Conservatoire de Paris. So he shoots off there. He thinks, I'm going to give this a lash. Now, for context, Ravel entered this competition 5 times. Not a fucking dicky bird, didn't win a thing. But he thought, I'll go in. Now, at that time, I think you still actually have to do this. You had to write a cantata for voice. And I think at that time it was 1 voice in orchestra. Now it has to be multiple voices in orchestra. And he'd never wrote in this style. But he gave it a lash anyway. Got a bit of help from Mr. de la Faye, from his mother's side. And he actually won it on his first try. Fucking amazing. So the prize at that time was 4 years at the Villa Medici in Rome, in Italy. You went to go there for 4 years, basically just to live around, compose, take in the art, and maximise your creative output. It sounds fucking great. Man, a 4-year prize to go and live the life in Rome, be fucking heaven. So, he worked away as a composer. And then, there was another world war. This lad's got no fucking luck. So, in between that, 1934, that's when the Flute Concerto was composed, if you want your context. So, he was very patriotic, and during World War II, France was under Vichy. There was a Vichy government. Vichy was the guy that ran France when the Germans took over. When the Nazis took over, sorry, I shouldn't say Germans. When the Nazis took over, Vichy was the government put in place. It was a puppet government. So on the outside, officially, France was still a democracy. Vichy was a Nazi puppet. So we called it the Vichy state. And under Vichy control, they actually banned Ibert's music. They tried to get him court-martialed as well for crimes against the state, but didn't quite get that far. And after the war, he returned to Rome. And he sort of worked between Rome and France till the end of his life in 1960. Now, for context on this, he died in 1962. I don't think people realise how late that is, how relatable this is. So for context, if Jacques Ibert died in 1962, he was alive when JFK became president. He was alive when construction began on the World Trade Center. He died the same year as Love Me Do, the debut single from the Beatles, came out. Jacques Ibert could have heard the fucking Beatles. Bob Dylan's first album came out the year Ibert died. The self-titled Bob Dylan album. He was alive when Elvis was knocking about. Hound Dog was released in 1956, so there is every chance that Jacques Ibert was partying and shaking his wee French hole to Hound Dog in 1956. And for even more context, there is a chance that Jacques Ibert might have watched 101 Dalmatians because it came out in 1961. Can you fucking believe that? That's disgusting, excuse me. It's wild. It's so recent, this. I don't think the context is quite there for a lot of people. So anyway, the Flute Concerto. Let's go on this. We've got enough background. War hero, frail wee boy, war hero, Elvis fan. Allegedly. Alleged by me. With a Guinness in my back garden. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday. Okay, the Flute Concerto. So, it was written for Marcel Moyse in 1934. Marcel Moyse was 45 at the time. You all know who Marcel Moyse is. Again, if you don't know who Marcel Moyse is, go and listen to the fucking French Flute School episode, please. Also, for the sake of this episode, I'm going to pronounce things with their anglicised pronunciation. I'm not going to Marcel Moyse as much as I can, because apparently people didn't understand who I'm talking about when I did that. You uneducated swines. And the orchestra was the Orchestre de la Société des Concerts du Conservatoire. Now, I know I did that in the French accent, but I'm going to translate now. The Orchestra of the Society of Concerts from the Paris Conservatoire. Now, basically, this orchestra, it was a professional orchestra, and it was attached to the Paris Conservatoire, the Conservatoire de Paris, and it was normally the teachers and the students playing together. It was a fully professional orchestra, and they did a lot of big things. They disappeared in 1967, and the chief conductor at that time, when the concerto was written, was Philippe Gobert. Fucking Philippe Gobert, flute daddy and Moises' old teacher, who was 56 at the time. Gobert. So Gobert's conducting, Moises playing. How fucking class is that? This orchestra, by the way, also premiered Symphonie Fantastique by Berlioz. So, like, it's big shit, this orchestra. It's not to be viewed as some kind of, like, amateur, pishy orchestra. It's a proper pucker orchestra. Now, analysis of this piece. Let's get into this. Oh, we're 10 minutes in already. We're flying here. I want to get this done in, like, 25 minutes or so I can go for another pint. He's all enjoying the background noise, by the way. I hope you can hear the river. It is beautiful. It has been absolutely pissing it down all day, and as soon as the weather cleared up for about 30 seconds, I ran outside. In my head, I was thinking, oh, this will be beautiful. I'll go record an episode outside in Ireland. It'll be beautiful and sunny. We're in spring. The weather's beautiful. The birds will be out. The lambs are running across the field. The river in the background. And then I remembered, no, it's Ireland, Gareth. Stop over-romanticising it. It's going to be pissing down with rain the entire time you're there. So we got a 20-minute break here. If the rain comes on, I'm going to fucking run like two men and a wee lad up those steps because my MacBook Pro will get soaked and I'll be fucked. So I've got a MacBook Pro, iPhone Pro, expensive microphones, and a €10,000 gold flute. So I'll be bucking it up them stairs. But I hope you all enjoy the background anyway. It is beautiful here. I do love Ireland. Right, so analysis. Let's get into this. So before we actually talk about the concerto style itself, the flute concerto, I want to talk about Ibert's style, because he is a unique wee man. Now, I don't mean his fashion style, although he did have some fucking drip in the day, boy. Go look at Ibert dressed up, man. He's fucking hottie. But I'm talking about his compositional style. So, again, context. Composers who were knocking about at the same time as Ibert. You had, in the Impressionist world, you had Debussy and Ravel in France. You had the late heavy romantics in Russia, people like Rachmaninoff, Prokofiev, Stravinsky. And then in Germany, you had the German Expressionism starting to kick off. So you had people like Gustav Mahler and Stravinsky. These are all people at the same time as Ibert. But Ibert was not in any of these styles. These are the three big styles at the time. Impressionism, German Expressionism, and heavy Romanticism. They were sweeping the world. Ibert didn't have any of them. He does have wee bits of each. So it's hard to nail down his style and what we describe him as a composer. But if we remove the bullshit from this word, the best description is eclectic. Now, not in the perceived sense of, oh, he can't make up his fucking mind what style he wants to write in, but more in the actual definition, which is deriving ideas, styles, or tastes from a broad and diverse range of sources. So that's what he is. He's the true definition of eclectic, in the best sense of the word. But Mr. Ibert is also French as fuck. And there are three things that are absolutely central to the French flute school, or the French flute rep of this time, the repertoire in its golden era. And that is pace, tempo, and tone, or suppleness, or sexiness of tone. I prefer sexiness. So, again, another reminder, this piece, this concerto, is not serious. It's not serious music. It's fun, and it's chaotic, and it's charming, but it's not some deep, heavy fucking masterpiece. It's not a Tchaikovsky or a Mendelssohn or a Beethoven or whatever those great concertos are. It's not that. We just don't have that in the flute. It's fun. It's a bit of crack. Okay, fair play. It's hard as fuck. But don't let that overtake the fun nature of this piece. It's a wee belter. It's a wee fucking stunner. To be out there in its wee fucking short dress with all the boys following it. It is that kind of piece. I love it. Now, the orchestration of the piece, it's small. By 1937, orchestras are big. Okay, this time orchestras are big. Usually with triple or quadruple winds, huge brass sections, and then the respective string sections to match. So when I say double or triple or quadruple winds, I mean triple winds is saying 3 flutes, 3 oboes, 3 clarinets, or quadruple very often, 4 flutes, even with Mahler 5. So the tradition was more in Mozart, Beethoven time, classical era, you had 2 double winds, or potentially even single. That expanded over time. By this point, we're at the peak of Romanticism. But this one only has double winds, a small percussion section, a small brass section, and then your string section will reflect that. If you have quadruple winds, you'll add more strings to beef out the sound and make a balance. With double winds, you have a small orchestra. So the orchestra in total with the Ibert concerto is probably, the standard is probably about 30 players. In and around. So again, the character of the music has to reflect that. You don't need to blast the fuck out of this piece, as a lot of people think you do. So let's talk about the structure. The concerto is a classic concerto structure. Fast movement, slow movement, fast movement. First movement is in sonata form. Then the second movement is slow, lyrical, beautiful, pretty. And the last movement is a rondo. And a little bit faster. That is a style that has been used since fucking Vivaldi's day, Mozart's day. This is a very, very classical style. Now, it's not stuck to. The rules are not adhered to as strictly as they were back in Mozart or Haydn's day. But the general structure is there. So it does show, I nearly want to say neoclassicism, but I hate putting the fucking word neo in front of things. Not because of his relation to the Matrix, but neo implies that you're not doing it right or you're reinventing it. It's a load of bollocks. But if we're going to insist on it, the form would be neoclassical or classical. Bog standard concerto. So the first movement. Now, here, before we even get started, this first movement, because this is the one you're all going to be playing for auditions and stuff. The tempo. I don't know if Ibert wrote this himself or if it was put in by the editor, but in any case, the tempo in the normal edition, the Le Duc edition, is 120. That's not that fucking fast, okay? Also, 120, that is a common recommendation for the first movement of the Mozart G major concerto. So we're talking identical tempos, generally speaking. So, it's about that, isn't it? Or dee dum da 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 dee da da. It's not that fast. Now this next bit is a wee bit of fucking gold for you guys. I have looked everywhere on the internet for this and I cannot find evidence of it. But I'm telling you, I'm telling the fucking truth on this. Nobody else has talked about this and there's no way it's a coincidence. So the first few flute notes, because the orchestra starts first for a few bars, then the flute comes in. The first few notes, the structure is 3 semiquavers as an upbeat to a long string of further semiquavers. Okay? So, da dee da 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 dee da 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 da. But the first 3 notes are da dee da da, and then the fourth one we're on the beat. Okay? And then loads of semiquavers, so away it goes. Now, Ibert wasn't a flute player, but there is one flute work he would have been very aware of. Every composer was aware of. Okay, Syrinx maybe, but we're not really talking Syrinx time. We're even more famous than that. And there is this famous work also starts with 3 semiquavers as an upbeat to a long string of continuous semiquavers. So let me see if you can guess this. If I slow it down, the Ibert starts, if I don't sing the notes, I just sing the rhythm. Ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ba. Okay, there's where the accent is. Ba 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 ba. What other piece starts with da 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 da? Have a wee think. Have a wee think. If I slow it down, da 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 da, da 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 da, da 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 da. It's the fucking same. It's the Bach partita. It's the first movement of the Bach partita for solo flute. It's the same fucking. There is no way that's a coincidence that both pieces start with da dee da 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 dee or da 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 da. There's no way that's a coincidence. I fucking refuse to believe that. That is not an accident. There is no way Ibert opens his major concerto for the flute in the exact same rhythmic fashion as the most famous piece in flute history. There's no way that's an accident. No fucking way. And you know what I hate? I hate the idea that Ibert deliberately put this in as like a wee joke for us all, because he was that kind of guy. Thinking, oh yeah, we'll all get a kick out of this as flute players. We'll all have a wee smirk on our faces every time we play it. And instead, we're also focused on not fucking it up. Everyone's missed the joke. No one's found this joke in the first fucking bar. Sorry, Jacques. But I've got you. I understood your joke. I think it's fucking funny. Your joke. Your joke. Your joke. I understand your joke, Jacques. Fucking funny. Thank you, Jacques. Absolute belter. Now, continuing on. The piece is in sonata form, more or less. Now, sonata form, not to be confused with a sonata, like the type of piece, the structure of piece. Sonata form is a form for a single movement, nearly always the first movement of a concerto. So, sonata form is simple. You have 3 sections. Exposition, so a musical idea or ideas. A development section after that, where you have new ideas, maybe building on the first ideas. And then a recapitulation, where it brings back the first ideas to wrap the piece up. A, B, A, essentially, with a bit more complication in it. So, where does this all happen? The very start of the piece, you have the exposition. And it goes right up to rehearsal marking 14. That's the exposition section. Then the development section starts, and it's a wee fun, floaty flute bit. Also, in this section, the flute doesn't have the solo. I will scream this to the day I fucking die. Please pay attention to that. You're not the solo part here. Listen to it. The clarinet has the solo. We tag along, so you don't need to blast the fucking arse out of it like Rampal with a rocket up his hole. The clarinet does it first, the strings then take it over. Or if you're playing at the piano, an incredibly skilled piano player will play the entire thing. It is a fucking nightmare for the piano players. So, I know it's not an easy section, but chill out. Blasting this section is the quickest way to show that you haven't got a fucking clue what's going on. And it's the quickest way to lose for the audience members or the jury members, especially, to lose interest in what you're doing. So, I'll let you hear a little bit of that now to tell you what section I'm talking about. Okay, and then the recap section, the recapitulation, is where the tune comes back. Now, it originally comes back a fifth lower, just for a couple of bars, of rehearsal number 20. So rehearsal figure 20. So that's a few bars, and then it goes back to the original key. So it's the and then it goes back to then it's back in the original key. So that's your recap. That's your 3 sections. Honestly, I recommend, if you're studying this piece or you're doing it in an audition, go and write this in. Get the map in your head of what's going on with the piece and understand what's going on. Practice your exposition and your recap together. Okay? Because they go together. They're meant to sound together. Practice your development separately. Make the link in your head. You'll make yourself a quarter less work as well, because it's basically the same thing twice. So you don't have to practice everything twice if you make the link in your head. So I'll let you hear here where the recap comes in and how it sounds a little bit different, and then notice the bit where it goes back to the original. Now, the last thing to note on this movement, and it is important to note, is if there's one bit you really have to practice in this piece, where it actually is hard, it is the scale in minor thirds. So it's around rehearsal mark 12. Okay, it's a fucking bitch. I'm not gonna lie. And if you're not used to minor thirds, it's particularly difficult. So a scale in chromatic minor thirds, what I mean by that is the do-re-do-re-do-re-do-re-do-re-do-re. The bottom notes of each two go up in a semitone. So F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, B flat, B. It goes up that way, okay? And the second note above each one of them is a minor third above the bass note. So it's minor thirds, but the bass note is climbing in chromatics. It is a nightmare. It is a fucking nightmare. It sounds awesome, but it is a nightmare to practice if you've never practiced it. So if you're going to practice any part of this piece, practice that bit. That's the bit that every jury is listening to. Usually if they're asking for an audition, they'll stop at the end of the exposition. So they'll let you do that bit, go up to the high C a few bars later. Bob's your Uncle Fanny's your aunt, we're done. Now, before we go on to the second movement, I'll have a quick break here for the Patreon. So if you want to skip ahead, if you've heard this all before, skip ahead. But for people who are new around here, the Inline G podcast is free and always will be free. That's a guarantee. However, if you want to donate to the podcast, you can now do so through the Patreon. On the screen now is the address. And for the audio listeners, it is patreon.com/the Inline G Flute Podcast. It costs €5 or dollars or pounds per month. And with that, you are legitimately keeping this podcast alive. You get 4 episodes a month, and that's the price of a pint. So if you saw me in a pub and you thought, fuck, I'd love to buy Gareth a pint because I get 4 episodes of entertainment every month, I'll buy him a beer for a £5. Do it virtually here instead. It's only a £5. I do everything around here on my own. From marketing, graphic design, research scripts, audio production, video production, etc., ad infinitum. Becoming a patron helps generate a regular income for the podcast, meaning I can turn down other work to focus on this. It also lets me travel to meet the greatest flute players in the world. And I get to ask them who their favourite Spice Girl is. As a thank you, you'll get to put your questions to these guys before everyone else, and you'll get all the episodes a little bit earlier than everyone else. So if you can afford it, please sign up over there. It means a huge amount. I cannot tell you how much this supports this podcast, and it keeps me going. Without those patrons, I would have given up by now, I'm not going to lie. You can unsubscribe at any time with no fee. You can jump in and out as much as you like. I do that often myself. So if you can afford it, it helps a lot. Great, thank you very much. If you can't afford it, don't worry. Someone else is paying for you to listen to it, so you can listen for free. So anyway, back to this podcast. Second movement. Now here, lads. Come in close to me. French composers fucking love a slow movement. The old wily bastards, the old silver-tongued devils, they love it, boy. I cannot wait for a slow movement when I'm playing something by a French composer, the dirty fuckers. Either it's absolutely heartbreakingly gorgeous stuff, like, for example, the middle movement of the Poulenc Flute Sonata, the Cantilène. Oh my god. Breaks my heart. Or you get some roller coaster, proper like raw emotion, dirtiness that takes you for the ride of your life, like the slow movement, the third movement I think it is, of the César Franck Violin Sonata, which does sound better on flute. So this slow movement for Ibert's Flute Concerto is a bit more like the former. It's just an absolute stunner. It's a belter. I hope you all know what belter means. I don't know if that's just Northern Irish lexicon or if that extends to the further developed world. A belter. A belter is just what it is. A belter is either a really good looking person or a great goal in the football. Or apparently a great slow movement in a French concerto. Now the form is quite free here, okay? As they often are in slow movements for concertos, but there's three main sections, okay, basically. There's the opening section, there's what I call the money moment, and then there's the accompaniment section. So the first half page, up to rehearsal number 28, it's just some gorgeous, oozy, dirty French melodies drawn out over these big, luscious, long phrases. It's so French, it's gorgeous, it works so well for the flute, it's fucking stunning. So my advice, take a big deep breath, and fill your fucking boots. It's an absolute pleasure to play this whole section. So I'll let you hear a bit of that now. Now we get on to the money section. The money section starts from rehearsal marking 28. And it starts building in intensity and tension. Then there's a wee marking saying the animando. I think it's animando poco a poco, which means get slowly or little by little faster. And it's just sticking the gas on. But you're slowly, you're just fucking doing, you can't, audio listeners, you won't get this, but it's that, just fucking getting it in. You know what I mean? Just pulling it out. And just, that's the best I can to describe it. This is what you come to this podcast for. Then you get to number 31. Rehearsal mark at 31 is where you let it all out. You pour your fucking soul out, man. This is where you leave nothing on the stage. Get it, put your heart on your sleeve and go. It's one of those rare moments in the flute world where you can genuinely, totally, and unapologetically let go. Just fucking blast it. And it sounds like this. And the last section, it's another accompaniment one. We had one in the first movement. So, I will write this in fucking letters on your score, whether you're professional or amateur, or you're learning for the first time. You are not the soloist here. Please, the amount of times I've heard, I'm not going to say who, Americans, blast this out, because they have no fucking clue what's going on. They have no sense of subtlety whatsoever. Rehearsal mark 33. There is a solo violin. Fuck up on the flute. Please, let them cook. Let them do their thing. They have the solo. The leader of the orchestra will be playing away, pouring their heart out. You just shut up. Just do your wee floaty bit. Sit around in the background, nice and quiet, but don't blast it. And this is the way it should sound. Now, the last movement. Oh yeah, the end of the second movement, it ends with a harmonic. So the last note is a harmonic. Experiment with which one works best, but please do not just play the normal note. Experiment with harmonic fingers. It's what gives it that lovely little colour. Again, it's subtlety. I have heard flute players say, oh, genuinely, fucking it all sounds the same. It's still a D. Is it a D? It is a D, isn't it? Or a D flat, D sharp, whatever it is. It's still the same note. It's fucking not. Okay? It has a beautiful little colour and subtlety to it. Use it. Please, for the love of God. Now, third movement. Rondo form. Again, very common in concertos. Mr. Ibert has taken great inspiration from the great classical concertos. Now, loosely, it's a loose rondo form. It's not stuck to the rules entirely. So we'll call it neoclassical if we insist on it. But it's not religiously measured like the classical era. The rondo form is basically A, B, A, C, A, D, A, E. So what that means is there's one main theme or themes, which we'll call A. And then there's other themes that come in we'll call B, for example, and then we go back to A. We go back to the first themes, and then we get another new theme. We'll call that C, and then we go back to A, and then we go back to, and then we get another new theme. We get D, and we go back to A, etc., ad infinitum, as much as you want. So the main theme in this, there's two rough ideas. Okay, I'll play the first one now, and I'll play the second one now. Now, these themes, I'm not going to lie, technically they're a nightmare. Especially because when they reappear, they're often like a semitone higher. So all the fingers you've learned from one go right out the fucking window. You have to relearn the whole thing. There's nothing related to the next group. It's a fucking nightmare, and it is hard. But my advice for learning this piece, as someone who has struggled with it for years, my advice is definitely learn these sections together, because your brain will start making the connections automatically. I saw a video the other day. I don't know if you guys are familiar with her. Maybe she listens to this podcast. I think her name is Hadar Neuberg. She's I don't want to fuck up her nationality, so I'll not say. But anyway, she's a flute player on TikTok, etc. She's becoming big on TikTok. And she had a video where she played the Mendelssohn Scherzo solo and then played it again a semitone higher. And that is, I don't think people appreciated how fucking wildly talented that is to do, to be able to just transpose up a semitone, which is the hardest. Because again, none of the fingers are related whatsoever. When she did that, it's fucking mad. And that's the kind of skill that you will get and you will train if you start practicing these sections together. Even though the fingers are wildly different, musically they're the same idea. It is the same intervals between notes. You might not learn it straight away, but you will start training your brain to make these connections. So do it now. When you're practicing one, practice the other one alongside it. Every single time you have the same theme, even if they're a semitone apart, practice them together so your brain starts making those connections. You'll make a map in your mind. It will start to work. It is golden practice, okay? Absolutely golden practice. It's really worth doing. Now. Oh, you get the musical education too. I never forgot to say that. That's a musical education. You're not just practicing the flute. It's like doing a wee Sudoku for your brain. Now, if you want to have a bit more crack, by the way, with this, here's what I would do. Go get your score, your flute part, and go divide it into the different sections. So write A, B, A, C, blah, blah, blah. Go and find them. You can't Google it, okay? Because as I found out researching for this podcast, unless you have a paywall, you have access to academic files. To get an analysis of this concerto, you can't get it on Google. So I had to analyse it myself. That's why it might be a load of bollocks. But don't think it is, though. So go and do it yourself. Go and work out, okay, this is the A section, those three themes. This bit sounds like a new theme. We'll call that B. Does that bit come back again? If so, we'll call it B when it comes back. If a different tune comes up, we'll call it C. Blah, blah, blah. Go and do it. Map it out. That's golden practice too. And the best thing about that practice, you don't even need to play a fucking note. You'd be amazed how much practice you can do in a concerto without even picking the fucking flute up. So go sit with your score. You don't even have to listen to it. You can do it all visually with a pencil. It'll take you half an hour. And you'll make a map in your head of how this piece goes. You'll start to understand it better. I promise. Golden. For a piece this big as well and movement this big, it's great practice. Now, also, there are two cadenzas in this movement. Firstly, what is a cadenza? You should know this if you're listening to this podcast, but if you don't, it's alright. I'm here. It's basically a wee section where the solo instrument plays something fancy and showy. That's it. Totally solo. No orchestra, nothing. Just the solo instrument, away they go. Flashy. Normally, it used to be improvised, but sort of romantic era onwards, it's more common to get written out. To the point now where nobody really improvises anymore unless we're doing period performance. Now, it's not unusual to be loved. Oh man, I couldn't help myself. Even when I was typing this script out, I did that. And I've been watching it coming up in my notes for the last 10 minutes. It's not unusual to have two cadenzas, like here, in a single movement. It's not. So, you have a wee mini one, and then you have a proper one a longer proper one near the end. Where does this happen as well? In flute repertoire, the Mozart D major flute concerto, in inverted commas, because it is an oboe concerto, transpose up to D. But there's a little mini moment for a concerto at the start, and then a proper moment later. So we'll call it the flute concerto, will we? Fuck, I was meant to wink there, but I'm wearing sunglasses, you can't even see it. Practice the cadenzas. Guys, practice them a lot. They're very free, but they're also super detailed in what Ibert is asking you for. Now, I've said this on this podcast before, but trouvez le mouvement dans le non-mouvement. It's really hard to speak French with a blocked nose. Find the movement in the non-movement. My teacher, Catherine Conton, when I was at the École Normale in Paris, she was principal for the Paris Opera, she said this all the time for French repertoire. Find the movement in the non-movement. It's a very French thing to say. She's very French. It's all very French. Voila. What it means is practice it bang in tempo. Stick a metronome up and put it bang in tempo. Follow the notes and the instructions and the tempos and the dynamics to the fucking letter. Drill it in. When you've understood that, then you can start bending things. Then you can start pushing and pulling. Then you can start having a wee bit of fun with it. You know, then you can slap its bum. But until then, stick to it. Get to know it well. French music isn't as loosey-goosey or as smoky or as ethereal as we like to think. These lads, they're fucking mad for a rule. The French love a rule. And the thing is about the French, when they have a rule, they love then finding some creative way to bend over backwards and break it. That's so fucking French, man. The French love rules and then breaking them. Vive la France. And finally, the last thing I want to say on this movement, the last note. It took me a long time to realise what the crack with this was. The last note is a high F. So, like the third F you get in the flute. The high one. The highest one you probably played. I'd be sure it is. It's not written in the piece, but it has become a convention to play the final F one octave higher. So, like, super stupid fucking extraterrestrial F. An F that you probably don't know the fingers for. I think most of us don't know the fingers for. We learn it for this one piece. You can only get away with it in this piece because you can blow the fucking ass out of it. And even if it's a bit sharp, nobody really gives a fuck. Because it's a big fireworks moment. It's blasted out. But it does work. And it sounds really cool. So for the finger, it'd be the fourth octave F on the flute. So higher than your top C, like your mega top C. The fucking fourth above that. It's very, very, very high. If you're thinking, is it that F? That sounds too high. It is that one. It's that high. You've never played it before. You'll never play it again. The fingers for it, you Google it. You have to fuck about with your flute and find out which one works for you. Because different flutes have different ways of playing it. Ask your teacher as well. There's many different ways of playing it. I would play it for you now, but my microphone would shit itself if I played that. So Google it, figure it out. So, lads, that's it. How long have we been talking here? 36 minutes? Jesus Christ, let's get the fuck out of here. That's Ibert in a nutshell. Well, 36-minute nutshell. Next week, I will be back with a guest from sunny Belfast. It was sure to be a pretty politically charged episode, so get ready for that. It's the first time we're getting balls deep into some politics here in Inline G, and I cannot wait. So anyway, to lead us out, here is the end of the Ibert Concerto from my personal favourite recording. The one, the only, my fucking man, Petri Alanko. Slan, lads. I'll see you next week.